Now we'll try to see about the objectives of disaster management. So among the primary objectives or aim of the disaster management is reducing the risk of any disaster or its severity. Okay, so reducing or preventing or eliminating the risk factor from its occurrences is the aim or the objective of the disaster management. Okay, so the mitigation. So what mitigation is a phase where the risk factor occurrence has been just eliminated, and its severity could also be just prevented. Okay, its severity could also be prevented by preparing a participated plan during the preparedness phases of the disaster management. And the other is capacity building. Okay, so here we need to build the capacity or the knowledge or the attitude and the skills of the health professionals, not only the health professional, the government, the middle level managers, even the individual, even the community members should have to be equipped with the training. Okay, so this is also another aim of the disaster management. So disaster preparedness will answer this question. Okay, so rapid response to disastrous situation to lower the losses of the consequence of the disaster. So this is also among the major objectives. We need to respond rapidly, we need to act, we need to react, okay, for the disaster as soon as possible. So if we answer or if we respond rapidly, so the probability of decreasing consequence of that disaster will be high. The other is saving the lives and the disposal of human and animal lives who are suffered from this calamity. So we need to, during the response phase, we need to also conscious, okay, while saving the lives of this individual and the animal. The other is supply of essential commodities to suffered individuals who are just suffering from that disaster. So they need to also offered by the most essential commodities, okay, or what call it, the food, it could be, okay. We need to offer them food, drinking water, essential water, adequate and safe water should have to be also supplied for them. Shelter, okay, temporary shelter should have to also be offered for them. And the other, even the most important, is after the disaster occurs, okay, rehabilitation or restoring of life after the disaster. So this is the activities which are conducting during the recovery phase of the disaster management. Okay, so we'll try to see the phases of management. So there are 4, and from that 4, so recovery is one disaster management phase. So during the recovery phase, so we need to focus on rehabilitating, okay, restoring, so to the normal life of the community, okay, so their prior life. So that could be community rehabilitation. So we need to restore the way how community lives so far. We need to rehabilitate, we need to restore the psychology of the community or an individual, medical restoration, health infrastructure restoration, environmental restoration. All these things must be conducted during the rehabilitation. So that is one of the objective of the disaster management, and taking measures so that the disaster will not occur in the future or reduce its intensity. So this is also one of the most important objectives. So during the mitigation, okay, during the mitigation phase, so we need to consider, okay, how or what type of activities will be better so as to prevent or so as to reduce the future occurrence of this disaster. So we need to think of that. So that is also one of the management objective of disaster management. Okay, so now we'll try to see about the phases of disaster management. So these are the phases, okay, these are the phases of disaster management. So primary will have the mitigation phase, so and here there is a preparedness phase, okay, preparedness phase. So both mitigation and the preparedness phase can be conducted before the occurrence of the disaster. okay, before the occurrence, while the response phase can be just conducted during the disaster occurrences, and the recovery is after the disaster. So we have 3 activities: before the disaster occurrence, during the disaster occurrence, and after the disaster occurrence. Okay, among the phase of management, the mitigation and the preparedness can be conducted before the occurrence of the disasters, and the response phase will be conducted during the incident of that disasters. So the recovery after the disaster. So what are the activities that can be conducted during the mitigation phase? So the overall aim of mitigation phase is just preventing future emergencies, future occurrence of these disasters, and minimizing their effects. Okay, the overall aim of this. And the another activities could be just public education. So we need to mass education. So we need to provide awareness creation program for the community on how to prevent this disaster. Okay, how to prevent themselves as well as their parents or their families. Okay, even the society. So we need to prevent. So through the campaign. Okay, by preparing different campaign, and we need to also assess the hazard and the vulnerability assessment. Which groups of individuals will be highly vulnerable for just to contract such disaster? We need to identify. We need to assess. We need to also assess where the hazard possibly be found. Okay, so this could also be assessed. Then it helps us for the effective reaction. Okay, for effective response and the improved infrastructure. So at the mitigation phase, we need to improve our infrastructure. The existing infrastructure should have to be strengthened, should have to be re-equipped again. Okay, recoup again. So especially the health infrastructure. So during the preparedness phase, so the aim is just to take action ahead of time to be ready for an emergency, for a disaster. Okay, so here national emergency could be launched. Okay, national emergency state could be launched, and the telecommunication and the response plans, or here there is what we call it the national emergency team could also be just prepared, and the telecommunication and the response plan, training and exercise. This is the most important. So we need to train, we need to build the capacity of the health professionals, the government and the community members, and we need to also exercise whether that plan is can prevent the occurrence of that disaster or not before it is occurrences, unless otherwise. So if we didn't exercise it, so we don't know how our plan effective it is. So early warning system could also be just given. Okay, given for the community, and the standard operating procedure could also be produced. Okay, so during the disasters, so we need to protect the life and the property in an emergency. So we need to save the lives of an individuals. Okay, we are working on saving the life of an individual, searching who are damaged, who are suffering from that disaster. So after the recovery phase, that means after the disaster recovery, there is a recovery phase. Here, restoring, just moving an individuals where they previously live in their primary settlements. Okay, we may also move them into primary settlements. We also improve the infrastructures, the damaged infrastructures, and we need to also improve the lives, in terms of their economy, in terms of their equation, in terms of their employment. Okay, so here the most important is rehabilitation of the community, rehabilitation of the environment, rehabilitation of the medical institution. So these are the most important. So next we'll try to see each phase one by one. Okay, each phase one by one.